Captain Paul Watson, Lamya, who is... But I want to start with a rather basic question. How do your team members call you? Is it Captain, Mr. Watson? Is it Paul? How should I call you?
Well, you can call me anything you like. I don't care.
Okay.
Paul's
So,
fine.
Paul is fine. This is Mr. Paul Watson from the Sea Shepherd. This is his colleague being responsible for the operations of Sea Shepherd in France. And we thought it would be a very good opportunity to have both of them on the stage. So you have the man who came up with the idea, who made it all happen, and you have the woman who's really pushing the things forward. Because you might have a question, how can I engage in Sea Shepherd? So she is the one who can answer that question. And to be not losing more time, would you just describe in a few words what brought you into starting Sea Shepherd? What was the initial moment of that?
I set up the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society in 1977 because I felt there was a need to uphold international conservation laws. You know, we have all the rules and laws and everything, and governments get together and they have all these meetings and they pass them, but nobody really enforces them. And I always felt protesting to be a bit submissive. You know, it's like, for years they're going, please, please, please don't kill the whales. And they'd do it anyway, you know, and hanging banners just wasn't stopping them. So we decided to go out and physically shut them down. And that's what we've been doing ever since. We go down and we physically shut them down. But we do so within the boundaries of practicality and within the boundaries of the law, strangely enough. And that's one of the reasons that we've never been convicted of a felony. And most importantly, we've never caused a single injury to a single person, nor have we sustained any injuries. But we have shut down whaling operations, illegal fishing operations very successfully.
When we met today and we were doing the prep talk, I was asking you if it's fair if I would say that people call you an eco-terrorist. And you said...
and you know, yeah, people call us everything, you know, pirates, eco-terrorists. I can tell you, I'm not an eco-terrorist. I've never worked for Monsanto or Shell or BP. Those are the eco-terrorist organizations on the planet. And we are fighting eco-terrorism all the time. The very word eco-terrorism means terrorizing the ecology, terrorizing the environment. And the problem is that all the eco-terrorist organizations have bought the support of governments around the world.
But why is it? Why are they using that term terrorist, which describes basically a danger to society?
Well, because we polluted the language just like we polluted the planet. It's very Orwellian, so you call one thing when it's completely the opposite. For instance, when we go to save seals in Canada, we get charged with the crime of witnessing a seal being killed, and that's under what a regulation called the Seal Protection Act. So if you protect a seal, you're going to be charged under the Seal Protection Act. So this is the kind of language they're always throwing at us. So one of the things they called us for years was pirates. So I finally said, well, if you want to call us pirates, we'll be pirates. And we're quite proud of that. Because you know what? The one thing about pirates that people forget is pirates get things done. They cut through the bureaucracy and they get things done. Henry Morgan was a pirate and he shut down piracy in the Caribbean. Other great pirates, John Paul Jones, who founded the United States Navy, was a pirate. Sir Francis Drake, we also have Robert Surcouf here in France, all were pirates. And Surcouf got the Legion of Honor. So, you know, pirates are not always bad guys. And the other thing that people forget is that it was the pirates who first attacked the slave ships and freed the slaves and offered them opportunities that were equal to everybody on the ship. And well, people will say, well, yeah, but they stole gold. Yes, they did. They stole gold from the Spanish, who stole it from the Indians, and therefore that was perfectly okay.
Okay. Well, coining the term pirate, what brought you into the Sea Shepherd?
Well, I was involved in other environmental organizations when 10 years ago I had the pleasure to meet Paul. He was in Paris and Sea Shepherd didn't exist in France. And we were like a couple dozen people in a room. What I've heard that day was something where I recognized myself. I really recognized myself in what Paul was saying. And I had no idea that there was someone who was actually doing it, and there was an organization that was doing it. So I pretty much dropped all my involvement in those other big organizations that I was involved in, and I went to Paul and I told him, well, I really want to help you, so what could I do? And he said, well, if you are willing to risk your life for a whale and you have some time, then apply and come on the ship. And that's what I did. And the next summer I was on a ship for our first campaign in Galapagos, and then in Antarctica. And I remember that I skipped my exams at university to go to Antarctica. And when I told it to my teachers, they were actually very understanding. And I had the opportunity to take a second chance on my exams the next summer, and I got them. And that was great because, well, I didn't have to not going with Sea Shepherd, and at the same time, I got my exams. And then in 2006, well, actually, that first campaign with Sea Shepherd, the first campaign in Antarctica was awakening because we were at the edge of the world in that area that was so remote and so dangerous. And this is actually the first time where I saw whales. And the whales that we saw were the whales that were being tracked down by poachers. And it's a very weird way of meeting the whales for the first time. And according to where they were going, we were thinking, okay, they're going in a safe direction, or no, they're heading towards the whaling fleet. It was very powerful. And at the same time, when we saw the Nishin Maru, which is the factory ship the first time, which was 8,000 tons, 10 times larger than our ship, it struck me. I was
How
like,
big are your ships?
that was the Farnamo at the time. It was 700 tons. Is that right, Paul?
What is it in meter? Because I have no idea how much 700 tons.
60 meters.
Oh.
Opposed to 250 meters. The Nishin Maru was a monster. I had seen it in videos and pictures, but to see it in real, and it was the day of Christmas, I remember, and the swell was so high, and the Nishin Maru was heading straight in our directions to intimidate us. And Paul said, I remember he said, we are not moving. And then we got the information that, hey, the collision is in 2 minutes, and if it had actually hit us, we would have sunk. And at that time, I was like, okay, so we may have 2 minutes left. I was scared, but I was like, hey, there is nowhere else I would like to be. This is the place where I want to be. And at the last moment, the Nishin Maru moved away, and we marked our points. And, well, I've never been afraid at sea with Paul, really, because
Let me ask you a question. You were on a boat, 60 meters. The other boat was 250 meters, going straight towards you, and you said, we're not moving. Are you crazy?
No, we have to. You know, I've had a lot of experience in stopping boats that way. Probably, you know, the first intimidating time was 1981. We had decided to invade the Soviet Union in Siberia to get evidence on illegal Russian whaling operations. And so we were actually the first people to invade the Soviet Union since World War II. We landed on the beach. There were 2 Soviet soldiers guarding the beach. And we got out of the boat to film everything. And they didn't bother us because who else would be there? But obviously we had to be Russians. So we filmed the entire operation for 45 minutes. And then we went to get back in our small boat to go back to the ship. And our ship was out there. It had the British flag, which from a distance looked like the Russian flag. So as I got in the boat, one of the soldiers came over and he pointed at our little boat and he said, "Što это? What is that?" And I said, "Это Zodiac." And he looked at me, "So, "Što Mercury?" And then I realized it was a Mercury outboard
You
engine.
speak Russian.
3 or 4 words.
Stop.
So they said it was an American outboard engine, and that's when I realized, oh my God, we're in trouble now. But I had a UPI photographer and a crew member in the boat, and as I was pushing the boat out, I said, "What's he doing?" Oh, he's taking down his rifle. Well, then for God's sake, start laughing and waving at him like this, because the psychology being nobody's going to shoot you if you're laughing and waving at them. And that worked, and it confused him, and he ran back up to the village, and we felt pretty good about it as we headed down the coast. And then about an hour later, 2 Soviet helicopter gunships came out and started firing across our bow and ordering us to stop. And about a half hour after that, a large Soviet frigate came alongside, and they were making all sorts of signs for us to stop. And the captain came on the radio, and he said, exactly, these are the words, "Sea Shepherd, stop your ship and prepare to be boarded by Soviet Union." My response to that was, I'm sorry, sir, but we don't have room for the Soviet Union. We're not stopping. The reason we got away with that is because navies don't know how to deal with the word no. They're used to intimidating the hell out of you, and you're just immediately going to do what they do. So what happened is that he didn't know what to do. And then he got in front of us, and we refused to move, and I said, "Captain, your ship's worth more than mine. I think you should get out of the way." And he did. Meanwhile, he's on the phone to Moscow because he doesn't want to make the decision because he doesn't know what the hell we are. And by the time he got the go-ahead, we were back into the U.S. water side of thing and got away with it. So we've had many new confrontations with the Norwegian Navy, the Portuguese Navy, the Icelandic Coast Guard, and we've always managed to get by simply calling their bluff. I wouldn't do it with the United States Navy, though. They're a bunch of cowboys, and but any other Navy has worked quite well.
So they're quite trigger-happy, the U.S. people?
Oh, yeah, they'll shoot you first, and then they'll ask questions later. That's the American way of doing business. But just ask any American policeman.
Yes, sir, officer. No, sir, officer.
But so anyway, we're used to dealing with those big ships. 2 years ago, we stopped the Japanese whaling fleet from refueling. Captain Peter Hammerstead on board the Bob Barker put the ship between the refueling vessel and refused to move. He was collided with 3 times.
This
they
is
attacked
what we
him.
saw in the video, the
Yes.
Bob Barker?
Yes,
Okay.
and he absolutely refused to move, and that won the day. They had to stop whaling.
Refuse to move. That's a Gandhi thing, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You just have to stand your ground. Now, people say, well, you ask young people, especially, to risk their life to protect a whale, and how can you ask somebody to risk their life to protect a whale? And I find that a very unusual question in a society where for hundreds of years we've asked young people to not only risk their life, but to die and kill for wars over real estate or pieces of cloth or for religion. How much more noble it is to risk your life to protect an endangered species, something that's been here for millions of years and will cease to be unless we intervene. That's much more noble than fighting for real estate, oil wells, or philosophical beliefs. Thanks.
So this brings me to another question. Like, obviously, your crew members need to be able to risk their lives, and at some point, you as the captain or whoever is the captain has to make a decision to say we're standing our ground. Have you ever thought that was a bad idea? Entering, you? Risking your life?
I think that Sea Shepherd is really clear with everyone who wants to volunteer. Paul had never made it a mystery, and when you engage with Sea Shepherd, then this is something you expect. And when Sea Shepherd says that we risk our lives for whales, this is not a slogan. This is true. So
do you sign some kind of agreement? I'm up for risking my life, whatever happens.
yes,
if
you
the captain
actually,
says so.
Yeah, no, well, you actually do sign something where you say that you acknowledge that those actions are risky. No one on Sea Shepherd's ship is candidate for suicide. We enjoy our lives and we don't take useless risks. But the people that we oppose are very violent, and we come across some strong economic powers. So there is a risk just because of that. And we do it knowingly so. And no, I've never thought that, that was too risky of doing. If you're afraid of risk, there are plenty of other organizations that you can join. Just Sea Shepherd is not for you. And there are many ways actually to support Sea Shepherd. You don't necessarily have to be on a ship in the battlefield. I don't think the ships couldn't go out at sea if there was so much work being done by the volunteers on land. They are the ones who keep the ships afloat. So it's not for everybody, but there is a place for everyone.
There is a place for everyone. Like, how do you find the right people to go on your ships? You don't want crazy people, obviously.
Crazy people can be useful.
For what?
To take risks that need to be. No, we do actually interview people. We've had over 5,000 people participate. Over the last 6 months, we've had over 100 people on 3 different vessels that have been working out at sea. Right now, Sea Shepherd has 9 ships, and we're campaigning all over the world. And so we do interview people, but we also watch them in the field and that. And but we're not having any trouble finding volunteers.
What is the man-woman ratio?
What do you mean?
Like how many men in compared to women you have on your
It's
ships?
1/3, I think. It's approximately 1/3 women for 2/3 of men.
Well, on some ships we have more women than men. Like the Martin Sheen, which right now, which is
Martin Sheen.
yeah, that's
the
name,
actor.
That's the name of our boat, also.
Why?
Well, because he's been a supporter of ours for 20 years.
You support, then your ship gets named after you. There will be a Jim Carrey ship sometime.
Well, you know, Bob Barker, who's a celebrity, gave us $5 million, and we bought a boat and named it after him.
That makes sense.
Sam Simon bought a boat for us, so we call that the Sam Simon. I mean, we don't have a lot, the kind of money that we need, so we get people to sponsor the ships, and in return, then we name the ship after them. But that's not always the case. We have the Jairo Mora Sandoval, that's named after a 26-year-old conservationist who was murdered for protecting turtles in Costa Rica. So it depends. But our captain on board the Martin Sheen right now is a French woman named Una Leol, and most of her crew is female. And right now she's involved with protecting the endangered vaquita in the Sea of Cortez and working in partnership with the government of Mexico to do that.
Okay. So, did you have any experience being on the water before you applied for? Well, what did you apply for? Just you said, Mr. Watson, can I? What's the way of applying for Sea Shepherd?
No, well, first of all, I joined Sea Shepherd 10 years ago, and 10 years ago the situation was very different because Sea Shepherd was much less known than today. And I would say it was easier to get on board without any experience, although we still have people without experience because passion and courage comes first. But to answer your question, I had no experience at all. And I was being made a quartermaster, and everything I know about ships, I've learned on the ship.
Are you, and this is a very, you have to put it like that, are you ever afraid? I mean, being out there saying, I'm going to stand my ground. I mean, there's a slight chance you might end up in the cold water. Sorry?
I was afraid, maybe that day that I was describing when the Nishin Maru was heading towards us in a high swell and with no rescue ship around, and yeah, I was afraid, but it's okay to be afraid as long as you stand your ground. I don't think that fear is something shameful. It's actually courageous to stand your ground even when you're afraid.
Well,
as I said, there was nowhere else I would want to be.
And I'm very much afraid. I'm afraid of a world 50 years from now with no whales, no dolphins, no elephants. I'm afraid of an ocean that is dying, that will not support life. Our life support system for this planet is the ocean. If the ocean dies, we die. We're intimately connected to the health of the biodiversity within that ocean. And a lot of people are very much alienated from that. But on spaceship Earth, the ocean is the life support system. And that life support system is being destroyed. And it's being destroyed because we're killing the crew members who run it. And it's that biodiversity that runs it. So it's the whales, it's the dolphins, it's the fish, it's the plankton. 80% of our oxygen supply comes from plankton, phytoplankton. And we depleted phytoplankton populations by 40% since 1950. So I don't think we're really aware of the destruction we're causing in the oceans each and every day.
Wow, this is the main stage. We should just continue like that. We're gonna talk a bit louder, and we're happy if you stay. We just have to talk louder, I reckon. You wanna continue, or should I?
Which actually brings me to one other thing. You know, there's various forms of pollution in the ocean: chemical pollution, plastic pollution, and sound pollution. And sound pollution is killing off our dolphins and it's killing off our whales, these creatures that actually see with their ears. Sonar testing, seismic testing, we are destroying the oceans with sound in addition to chemical pollutions. And we have made the oceans a very, very noisy place. And that might be okay for it to be a noisy place here, but for animals that are that sensitive to sound, it's an extremely dangerous situation.
Now we are experiencing how hard it is if that sound mixture really crushes in. But I hope you can still understand. Is it okay? I think we should continue because this is the main stage, this is the think tank stage. We're going to continue. For me, I'm from Germany, and when I look at the pictures, the videos from Sea Shepherd, one question still remains, and that is, what is Japan's problem with whales? Japan's problems with whales. Why do they just, there's no reason for killing them, or what is the obvious reason?
Japan has a policy that they're not to give in on anything, whaling, fishing, and they just have a no compromise policy on it. The other problem is that the Institute for Cetacean Research is a Japanese government-owned group, and the people who get the high-paying jobs in these groups are retired politicians. So they set up these companies. Now, if we abolish whaling, we abolish the companies, we put those guys out of business. They have a lot of contacts in the Japanese government.
Okay, so it's kind of an ego thing and a structural problem. There's no obvious reason for killing just because you don't want to back off.
Well, also we have this thing called the economics of extinction. There's money to be made by driving animals into extinction. For example, bluefin tuna. The bluefin tuna, as their numbers go down, the price goes up. The demand goes up. Mitsubishi has 15 years' supply of bluefin tuna in their warehouses right now. If they could stop fishing tomorrow and still provide bluefin tuna for the next 15 years, but they won't do that, because if they do it, the price will then go down and they'll lose money. But if they wipe them out, if there's no more bluefin tuna in the world, what they have in their warehouses is worth billions of dollars, and the profits that they will realize are incredible. So they want to see the depletion. They're invested in depletion. That's what our fishing corporations are. You know, we have to, if we're going to save our oceans, we have to get rid of all industrialized fishing operations, all these 100-kilometer long lines, drip nets, bottom trawlers, all of this mechanized fishing that is destroying the planet. And people say, oh, what about the poor fishermen? The poor fishermen are being destroyed by these industrial operations. 1 million Indian fishermen have lost their jobs because of the Norwegian trawler fleet going down and taking everything. We have pirates in Somalia because they've been driven into poverty and desperation by the real pirates, the Asian and European fishing fleets, which have taken everything out of their waters. And right now we're having the same thing happening off Senegal and Mauritania. And 10 years from now you will hear about the pirates of Mauritania, the pirates of Senegal, because it will be impoverished, desperate people that have been driven to that desperation by the big mechanized trawling fleets.
So, when both of you would have the opportunity to address 3 wishes towards the audience, what should they, what should we, what should I do tomorrow? What should I do tomorrow? 3 things to really help you, help the planet, help, well, whatever mission we're on. Are there 3 things you would address to the audience?
I would say that the main thing that can be done is to think carefully about what you put in your plates, because this is actually the way you have the most impact on the planet. It's not what kind of car you drive or what kind of clothes you wear, of course that matters, but what you choose to put in your plate 3 times a day, that's what matters the most. So, yeah, think about what you choose to put and what you choose to not put. And like to talk about the example that Paul was giving about Somalia and what is happening right now, what's going to happen in Senegal. We try to do a campaign in Senegal against illegal fishing because West Africa is the area where there is the most poaching in the world. And the problem is that that fish ends up in our supermarkets, in our fishing stores, in our restaurants, and people don't think about the connection where that comes from. So this is a fish, those are fish that we steal to those people. And people need to think about that. So one of the objectives of the campaign was to raise awareness also here in Europe about the thinking of where their fish comes from. So I would say that's the main thing. And then everything that you can do in your own area, according to your own sensitivity. I mean, to me, Sea Shepherd has been an incredible vector because it's quite a unique organization, and because Paul, well, he's sitting next to me now, but I usually don't say this with him, but he's very inspirational, and I never felt like I was a puppet here to apply, to do something that has been decided by a huge organization disconnected from my feeling and my thoughts. I had many concerns on things that I wanted to do, and every time I talked to Paul about it, he was like, sure, if we can find a way to do it, let's do it. So that's very empowering, and you feel like you can actually really make a difference. I think I would have been involved in the environmental movement anyway, but to meet Paul and to be involved with Sea Shepherd has raised it to a whole other level. And I think that's why Paul right now is saying more and more that Sea Shepherd is more than an organization. It is a movement that everyone can join, and it really lifts you up to a level that's, well, I wouldn't think that I could be able to do. But because Paul is a great living example, that's something that seems impossible is actually possible. I mean, his life is the best example. So when you have the chance to meet someone like that and to work closely with him, then that's great. There are many other ways, but I think that's the message that needs to be put across, even outside of Sea Shepherd.
Vincent, can you get us microphones for the audience questions? Last question to you before we skip over to him. How can people join Sea Shepherd France? What should they do?
Well, there is a website where you can find all the information on Sea Shepherd France and the local events that we do. We have 15 local groups in France, and you can contact the group that's the closest from you and join this way. And I would like to say that when we set up Sea Shepherd France in 2006, I really thought that it would remain really small, because I thought that Sea Shepherd way of doing things is way too radical sort of things for the French ecology, which is a bit shy. But I'm happy to see that nearly 10 years after we set it up, it has become one of the most important entities of Sea Shepherd. And I think it gives a lot of hope about the French public. There is a lot of energy and will to do things in France, and more than what I was expecting.
So, 3 things. Or 5 or 1, you make the decision.
At the end of this year is the climate change conference, which will be happening here in Paris.
We can go there. The sound is better if we stand there,
No,
actually.
at the end of this year, there'll be the climate change conference in Paris, and the governments from all around the world will be coming here to find a solution to climate change. The solutions are here. We have the solutions, but they will not talk about them. Everybody wants to see the change, but nobody wants to change. If they want to address climate change, then they have to replenish biodiversity in the oceans. That means we have to shut down every industrialized fishing operation in the world, and we have to stop subsidizing the fishing industries to the tune of about $75 billion is what you're doing it right now. And the other thing is this fact. 65 billion animals are slaughtered every year to feed 7.5 billion people. That is the largest wastage of water in the world, the largest wastage of land in the world, the single greatest cause of dead zones in the ocean, the single greatest cause of groundwater pollution in the world, and the single greatest contributor to greenhouse gases, more so than the entire transportation industry, and nobody wants to talk about it. We have to adopt a different lifestyle. You know, the big environmental groups will say, we have to conserve water, and the best way to conserve water is to take a short shower. One hamburger takes 600 liters to produce. That's 2 months of short showers. 6 hamburgers is 1 year of showers. I mean, those are just simplistic ways of getting around it, of not talking about the real issue. You know, you simply cannot, 40% of all of the fish in the ocean right now is not even eaten by people. It's fed to pigs and to chickens and to fur-bearing animals, domestic salmon and domestic house cats. Right now, chickens on factory farms are eating more fish than all the world's puffins and albatross put together. Domestic house cats are eating more fish than all the world's seals, and pigs are eating more fish than all the world's sharks. That's not a natural situation, especially when it comes to cats and fish. Cats don't even like the water, and if they ever met a fish, it'd eat the cat. So that's not a natural sort of situation. But here's the other problem we're doing. By diminishing life in the sea, we're diminishing the means to keep this thing going. One blue whale every day dumps into the ocean 3 tons of shit. 3 tons. Now, why is that important? Because that's nitrogen-rich, iron-rich manure, which fertilizes the plankton, the phytoplankton, which feeds the zooplankton, which feeds the fish, which feeds the whales. You know, nature has run everything on this planet beautifully for millions and millions of years, and all of a sudden along comes a land-dwelling monkey that decides to go into the ocean and take everything out and put nothing back. That's what we're doing. We're a bunch of overly conceited naked apes who are divine legends in our own mind, and we're running amok. We're out of control, and we have to control ourselves. And the best way to do that is to change our behavior, especially with what we eat.
Thank you. Thank you.